Hello, everybody. We're live.
Good morning, everyone. Afternoon or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you for joining our Finding and Hiring the Best Technicians MSP live chat today. Just a couple housekeeping items. The session is being recorded, so just keep that aware. I see Sandra in the chat right now. It will be recorded, so thank you for that. I see folks tuning in from all around the world, so welcome, and let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat. From Detroit, Canada, people over in London. So thank you so much for joining. We also recently just dropped our link to the resources document in the chat. So go ahead and open that up. There's resources in there and a guide out of the conversation today. This will also be pulled up on screen intermittently throughout our conversation. If you take a look at the bottom of your screen, there is a polls option down there. I see some people have already found that and are submitting answers to the polls. So thank you for doing that. We'll pull some data from that throughout the conversation. Additionally, there is an ask question field. We love when people ask questions and engage with us. So feel free to drop a question in there and we will get to that through the conversation. Finally, if you're feeling brave and bold and you want to come up on stage at some point, let us know in the chat and we'd be happy to do that and maybe address some of your hiring and retaining needs live on this call. So yeah, let's start hopping into it here. Starting with Tom, how are you today?
Good, glad to be here.
Awesome. Jonathan, how about you?
I'm doing well, thanks, everybody. I'm Jonathan Crow. I'm Director of Content and Community here at Ninja. If you haven't seen my mug before, but I'm a regular here on the live chats. And Dom, you should tell who you are too. Tom is our channel chief advisor. He's a former MSP owner, and now he's here. As the panel here was discussing, he's on the dark side. He made that transition a while ago, but he brings great perspective. And a lot of people here familiar in the call. You know us already, but Dom, why don't you say who you are, then you can kick it off to our special guests.
Yes. My name's Dominic Scafidi, content marketing manager here at Ninja. Work with Jonathan and Tom. So yeah, very excited to be leading this up today. Let's start with John Davin-J, CEO of Bowman Williams. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is John Davin-J. I am the CEO of Bowman Williams. Started the company about 10 years ago. My previous life, I was working in managed services. I was doing sales and operations in Frederick, Maryland, 35 miles outside of DC. And there was a bottleneck in trying to scale that business. And I fell backwards into staffing, and we exclusively staff the MSP industry. We have 800 MSP clients that we staff. We operate in 5 different cities, and we've interviewed over 10,000 MSP professionals.
Very cool. Thank you. And you and Tom both have had MSPs in the kind of DC metro area, so it's very cool. Mark Elliott, can you also introduce yourself? You're CRO at the 20. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also the business of the 20.
Absolutely. First and foremost, pleasure to be here with you guys today. As you mentioned, Mark Elliott, CRO of the 20. And our organization has, through a partner network, we do service delivery in 185 locations across the country. We anticipate within the next 30 months, we'll be at 500 locations and cover every square inch of the United States for same service delivery from coast to coast. Then as a little side hustle, I also have an MSP that's about 10 million in revenue based down in Houston, Texas.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us today as well.
Yeah, if all of us can only have a side hustle like that, that's pretty good there, Mark.
Yeah.
Also want to say hello to folks. We are streaming live on LinkedIn as well. So if you're on LinkedIn, thank you for tuning in there too. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start with this document here. If we could pull up that 2021 MSP hiring trends. And John, I know you wanted to start here with just what are some of the effects of Corona on hiring, coronavirus, and just trends that you've seen in the MSP hiring right now.
Sure, absolutely. So because we're niche, that affords any niche company a unique bird's eye view, and you get to keep a pulse on the industry. And so we get asked all the time, what are you guys seeing out there, and what's the hot positions, and what other MSPs doing? And we also hear the market is just crazy, and I can't keep up. And so I have a client in New York City, and I probably staffed almost half of his employees. He's got about 40 of them. And he was just telling me, you can't believe he's spending this much time on trying to hire. And he didn't, usually this task is passed off to somebody else within the company. He just He's just spending way too much time on it, he thinks. So I think, most MSPs aren't alone trying to navigate this process. And so it's really difficult to put a finger on what's changed. When you go through a big change like we have, like a national pandemic, it's really difficult to perceive the impact of it, especially when, you're living it real time. Um, so yeah, first and foremost, this is the topic that has kind of put Bowman Williams into a position where we've, been working with more MSPs than we ever have in the past. And I think that hopefully we can spotlight some different trends that we're seeing and help you guys navigate the hiring process, because don't get it twisted, folks. We all might not be in the same boat together, but we are in the same storm right now. And I'm a business owner, and I know that trying to scale my business, we take a formulaic approach to it. You take what didn't work and you throw it out the window, and you take what did work to get your business to where it's at, and you replicate it. But the difference now is that when we're all taking steps to try and hire and scale, the landscape is completely different. It's almost like we're terraforming, trying to hire and scale. But I think there's probably 4 or 5 primary shifts and changes that are working as a catalyst to like reshape the landscape right now. Probably the first and foremost is obviously the fact that MSPs are starting to adopt the work from home model. Originally, it came to be because it was out of necessity in order to keep the doors open, in order to keep employees safe. And now MSPs, a lot of them are starting to hop on the train. Some MSPs are deciding not to embrace the model. And we did a survey back in July of this year, and we surveyed 549 different C-levels, MSP professional and business owners. And 68.75% of them said they plan on embracing the work from home model and bolstering their work from home staff. So there's benefits to it, and it seems like the MSP industry, at least from the survey results that we got, it seems like it's going to be embraced, at least for the short term, and it's here to stay. The second big change is going to be, I'm not sure what they're putting in the water right now, but the demand for managed services from my perspective, in 10 years, doing what I'm doing, I've never seen it where it's currently at. It's at a fever pitch. And when you're trying to, I think most MSPs are experiencing this, right? Where it's like you can't scale and hire at a comparable rate to how much business you're pulling in. And that goes from being a very, cute, positive problem to just being a problem. And that's exacerbating the situation. I think a lot of MSPs are kind of scrambling, and that is causing a lot of offers to go out the door, and a lot of offers are getting turned down, and that can ding your ego, and that can take your time. And I think a lot of MSPs are starting to feel the frustration. So it's a frustrating process because demand is so high. Third force is probably going to be coming out of the post-pandemic, the fact that we're in a candidate-driven market. And a candidate-driven market is characterized by there being an abundance of jobs open on the market, but we don't have a finite number of candidates to choose from. And so the candidates are being hyper picky. There's nothing like a national pandemic to turn a bunch of MSP candidates into middle school divas. We're seeing it. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that happening right now. They're very picky, and they're actually accepting job offers right now for lateral offers, taking on average like 5K less to be able to work from home. So there's been a fundamental shift in the candidates' minds and how they prioritize salary, and you can't just throw money at the problem anymore, which makes it difficult to compete. And lastly, the fourth catalyst is probably going to be that most MSPs are waging a war on both fronts on trying to source and find talent and retention, because the work from home, the introduction of that model is kind of a trump card. And we'll see MSPs that have fantastic, tenure and retention and great benefits, and they pay really well. But it's almost like that's being thrown out the window because a lot of candidates, especially the tier 2s and tier 3s, they're prioritizing work from home and quality of life. And so trying to retain and deciding if you're going to adjust in that model, it's a lot to unpack, and it's really reshaping the landscape right now. And when you try and piece it all together, I think it makes the landscape very unusual. But I think work from home and trying to scale is something we'll have to figure out, because I think it's here to stay.
Hey, John, just to echo some of your comments there, wanted to draw people's attention to the polls. And everybody who already has submitted a poll, thank you for doing that. Anyone who hasn't, take a spin down there. It's at the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear your answers here and get them compared to the answers we've already gotten. But yeah, I mean, just to check this out, like on a scale from 1 to 5, how challenging has it been to fill open positions over the past 6 months? 5 we categorize as just brutal, and that's gotten the most answers right now. So that's a challenge. Average time to hire, the most people are saying 2 to 5 months. We scroll down, we see what's the urgency here in terms of hiring. Again, people going, filling open positions, new positions, is they anticipate it being an extreme urgent need next year. And is a lack of staff holding back the growth of your MSP? Majority again saying yes, and so this does seem to reflect what you're saying, and also the feedback we got. The reason we're doing this webinar or this topic on this live chat is people are saying, "Hey, we're struggling right now to get candidates." And if we look in the chat here, thanks Antonio for bringing this up, because Antonio got a bunch of heads nodding here in the chat. He's saying, John, you're talking about dealing with technicians turned divas and having some struggle, some competitiveness there in terms of getting the offer. Let's scroll back even before that and talk about getting candidates in the door. Antonio is saying they used to get 100 plus resumes per ad. Now they're getting 5 or 6. And we got Sandra, we got Alan saying, yep, that's what we're seeing here too. Marina, same thing. So yeah, I guess curious, even stepping back before we're talking about dealing with candidates and trying to appeal and trying to get them to say yes to an offer, trying to say, hey, I'm interested in even a role. Like, are you guys seeing that as well in terms of just filling up the candidate pipeline? Is there anything that you're doing or helping out with your clients in that regard?
Yeah, I think this is a time where casting a wide net and being proactive is the winning strategy. Unfortunately, I think every single stage of the process, when you start to move the ball forward to start hiring, I think every step, unfortunately, has to be executed to perfection. One thing I've learned when I first started my company, we had very generic job postings, and we put a lot of them out there. And luckily, my recruiters, I got a great team, and they're experienced, and they write every single job description tailored, and they slow down and do it. And ever since that approach, we've gotten more candidates coming in the door. But I think that casting a wide net, being proactive, there's no silver bullet. And so I think that trying to get the funnel in as much as you can, starting with not being picky, and then kind of starting to get more picky, of course, as you go through it. But yeah, there's no winning strategy. I think Indeed.com is a great resource. Of course, there's LinkedIn. I like to do the ad posting. We don't use LinkedIn. We just use Indeed and Craigslist to find candidates. Craigslist is a great source.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dom, I'll let you take it from here, but just going down to see what are other levers people can pull. You're saying don't be picky. Maybe one of the areas of being picky. I know I've talked to specifically a few MSPs who we've had on the call on previous live chats, including Ray Orsini down in Florida. He's talked about how he hires all over the country now, and we see people responding in the poll that most still are not considering. Actually, it's changed now that more people have responded as yes, they're actually considering out of state. I know that's a topic we're going to cover. But Dom, I know you were looking into the bigger picture, right? Like, how is this tying into the headlines and news that we're seeing nationally in a more general way? You see all this stuff of Wendy's and McDonald's closing because there's no employees, and in a larger labor shortage. I know I hear it just locally with restaurants and other businesses here in the town I'm at, where people are having a really hard time. And I'm just wondering, maybe it just makes sense that, of course, that's going to flow into technician, to MSP work too, but is there something that's different that's going on? But anyway, you want to talk about some of the stats that you're looking at?
Yeah, and even before I get into that, I want to say, John, I've never heard of Craigslist being used before, so interested to even hear a little bit more about that, and if anybody in the audience uses Craigslist for their talent search and how that's used, if it's free, and so on. But yeah, I was looking at some data from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce here, and I could pull this up. It was just data looking at job openings and how they've surpassed, the unemployed right now. It's an interesting kind of almost upside down place in the economy to be. As of July, there are almost 2 million more job openings in the overall economy than there are people that are unemployed. So we're seeing that as a kind of major differing trend right now. Something else we're seeing too, if you look at the remote situation, there are big winners and losers in terms of what states are gaining and losing jobs and remote job positions. Top states for tech job postings, we're seeing states like Texas and Florida make big gains, along with Virginia and Massachusetts. Other states like California are seeing a decrease. So those are just some of the things I want to point out here in terms of that data. I'd like to also ask Mark, are you seeing similar kind of things in your hiring process today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at this whole talent warfare we're in, right, it makes me lean back on a book by Patrick Lencioni called Good from Great. And the whole premise of this book was about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. And when you look at our business model at the 20, we have taken hundreds of small IT companies and have birthed them into multi-million-dollar operations. Why? It's because we understand two things. The difference between a $1 million MSP and a $10 million MSP is people and execution, right? And so I think that's really an underlying vein here. And the market has been constricted, but it's like that saying, every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and he's got to be faster than the fastest lion, right? And then the flip side of that. So when you take small MSPs, which even my MSP down in Houston, which is $10 million, that's a rounding error for big companies, right? And we have this very immature business segment that's here. And it's simple when you really look at this. If you go on the offense for your talent, is all you have to do is be better than your competition, right? And that you can recruit out of companies, but it's not the easy way, right? I think when you start to look at Indeed or aggregators out there, that's the froth that's at the top. That's the easy way out, right? And so when it really gets down to getting in good talent, we've taken a different approach, and maybe we'll go deeper in that later.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of curious with those who we have some folks in the chat that are just saying had someone cancel a second interview just today. Lost out. I'm curious if by the competition, are we talking solely other MSPs? Are we talking internal? John, do you have a sense of that when you're unfortunately on the line on your clients are on that end of the spectrum when they're losing out to people? Are you getting a sense of who they're losing to? Is it other MSPs or is it internal or is it something else?
I think it's likely a mixed bag. I think other MSPs, I think they know that the experience that they can leverage is what's going to get them ahead in their career and professional lives, and that experience is going to be relying on your MSP experience. But yeah, when things started getting topsy-turvy back in March, Bowman Williams had 14 job offers turned down in the month of March. That has never happened. That's like 4.5 times more than the average. And so what I think is happening is we're seeing a lot of candidates are like not just picky, they're being uber picky. And so when it comes to going after the candidates, and it's, Indeed's an aggregator and there's a lot of noise on there. But at the same time, and it's easier for smaller businesses that don't have an internal recruiting staff, right? It's kind of like cast a wide net and throw some money at the problem and get some people coming in that way, and then do some headhunting, like Mark was talking about. But yeah, know who you're trying to hire, whether it's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Those different tiers typically have their own demographics, their own needs and their wants. And so it's how you pitch a position if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, or how you formulate a job description, even changing the title. And then when it comes to the interview process, it's the first interview, in my opinion. I guess this is just our style here. When I interview people to join my company, I don't spend the first interview. I'm spending 90% of that time selling. I want the option at the end of that interview to be able to decide if I want to bring that person forward. I bring most people to a second round, and that's where I do my deep dive. So really selling the process, truncating your interview process. I'm not saying skip steps. I'm not saying deviate from what has worked for you historically, but truncate it, because you block out you monopolize the candidate's time, right? And I also think that, disc assessments and personality assessments, those things are great, right? We use them, but maybe put them towards the end of the interview process. We're seeing so many candidates turn down requests to interview because the very first step is taking an assessment. They're like, why would I jump through these hoops and budget my time 15, 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes sometimes, when I can just open my window and throw a stone out my door and, find comparable opportunities. Don't have to do that. So do interviews first, tell them how great you are. That way they can justify putting the time in. But yeah, it's difficult. tempo is everything and casting a wide net, and there's a lot of strategies for that. But yeah.
And can you elaborate on some of the things like candidates are looking for? You talk about throwing that stone out the window, but what are some of those specific things a candidate's looking for in this candidates market, John?
The thing that our recruiters are trained on day one, and it's at the very top of, we use Salesforce, like the candidates page, is reasons for leaving. RFL. It tells you so much where their priorities lie, what kind of opportunities are they going to be genuinely open to, accepting a job to join them. And when we interview candidates, we used to just ask them, like, what is your target salary? And we record that information into Salesforce. I mean, as 2021, we have two different boxes now. We say, what is your target salary for a local job? And what is your target salary for a work from home position? Because a lot of people would sacrifice compensation to increase with the increased quality of life. Tier 3s put the most amount of emphasis on it. Tier 1 obviously puts the least. Tier 2 somewhere in the middle. But yeah, candidates that typically, just as like a general rule of thumb, like that fit a tier 3 profile or $80,000 or more, I'd say I had a stat for you guys, which is really interesting. But the average salary decrease, as someone says, tier 2, tier 3 will be $5,000 less. We had a candidate, real quick story. We had a candidate named Tony. Tony's based in Washington, D.C. and worked for an MSP. He's like a 2.5. That's his like tier skill set, right? We got Tony 2 job offers. One was from a prominent MSP based in Washington, D.C., and the other was from New York. The DC-based MSP offered Tony $20,000 more than he was currently making. Great. That's a great jump for Tony, any industry, any standards. The New York-based MSP offered him $14,000. The DC-based MSP tried to negotiate, right? They threw money at the problem. They offered him $30,000 more than he was currently making. And Tony ended up accepting the job for $14,000 increase. He left $16,000 on the table to be able to work from home. So there's a lot of like curveballs going on out there, and it's like you got to just be comfortable being uncomfortable and know that you're going to be blindsided every once in a while.
And it's just very interesting to see that you have people leaving money on the table. You have salaries shifting in almost a negative way, but there's more jobs available than ever before. So there's a lot of different just data variables out there than ever before in the employment market. Would also just like to talk a little bit about what you're seeing on that front as well, Mark, when it comes to hiring candidates. Are you seeing them asking for similar things or different things, or yeah?
You see a lot of the work from home that's coming, coming up today. And during the pandemic, this is something that we tested a little bit. And so I don't know if you guys remember that movie that came out, The Transporter. But in one of his first movies, he said in the car, he goes, the rules are the rules, right? And I don't think that work for home or service desk work works at all. It is a horrible business decision if you're concerned with your client. And I think when we say people want to have good customer service doesn't matter in this industry. It is about client outcomes and speed to resolution, right? And when you staff towards that goal, right, which is not customer service, it affects customer service, but it's different. And so when you take people and they're working in a distributed workforce model, you lose the ability to have tribal knowledge. Your tier 1s don't turn into tier 2s. Your tier 2s don't turn into 2.5s, right? And so that knowledge share is there, and then you have no ability to swarm, right? What happens when your tier 1s are all on the phone and you've got an issue? That tier 3 sometimes has to back up a tier 1 problem. But if everybody's in a distributed workflow, it's broken. So the question is do you want to accommodate what the market's asking for, or do you set true north and deliver high customer expectations and outcomes and about resolution? And really this comes down to, do you want to win or not, right? Are you going to get whipped in the wind by what the market's doing today? And I think there is a need. There is some roles that can be work from home, right? In variety areas of your business. And I think not can be one of them. But if you start trying to do that on the support desk, I think that you're going to have lackluster results long term, and you've got to hold the line.
Yeah, I'm interested, Mark, with going back into kind of building out the team, because I mean, obviously, right now, I mean, you guys are at a level maybe a lot larger than some of the folks on the call here. And if we look down at the polls, we asked a question, and it goes back to what we've been talking about and what John has chimed in on here. It's what do you think technicians value most? And we have salary, work-life balance, career growth opportunities, by far the biggest thing. And maybe this goes back into what you're talking about of having exposure to more experienced technicians. I'm just curious about your guys' process in terms of pitching and encouraging that career growth, showing candidates, hey, this is going to be a great place for you to grow your career, and then actually following through on that. Because as we see in the chat too, a lot of people are pointing out, hey, when hiring is so tough, retention's a big key too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, who's that question directed to?
Oh, sorry, I'm directing this to Mark. Sorry, I was just curious. Sorry, I was curious if what you guys are doing in terms of making career growth, making it clear that hey, the MSPs that you're working with and you're helping them out, making it clear that hey, this is a great growth opportunity for your career for a technician.
Absolutely. So, I think that this message and inviting people to be part of a winning team, starts in marketing, right? It starts in what the three uniques of the corporation is. It relates to what the core focus of the business is, and having somebody buy off on the fact that these are core values that we believe in, right? And then once you have this baseline of your core values, you can hire, reward, fire, and coach around these core values. And I think they always say in life, whether you're looking at a friendship, a marriage, or a business relationship, they always say right time, right place, right people. And when those three things fit together, it's a good fit. But I'm going to give you guys an analogy that can bring this home, right? We talk about, and we saw in the surveys in there that it's 60 days to get a role filled, right? And there's a bit of a reaction, man, that's tough. Let's relate this to sales pipeline, right? During the pandemic at my MSP, our new MRR revenue dropped. But during 2020, we still wrote 180,000 in new monthly MRR. Why? It was because pipeline. It was deals that we had been working on for a long time that brought that forward, right? Nobody that had good pipeline suffered during the pandemic. Now let's relate that to the recruiting side of the house, right? You need a job ad, you fill it. You haven't been working on pipeline. You haven't been on offense, right? Out there talking to people, having relationships with them, inviting them to a lunch or a beer on a quarterly basis and working them just like you do a prospect. That's how you build candidate pipeline. So when you show up and you're like, oh, we need a new role filled, it's going to, and maybe it's 60 days and you don't get the cream of the candidates, well, it's just like sales pipeline. That started a long time ago. And if you don't make that investment, because again, the difference between a $500,000 or a $1 million MSP and a $10 million MSP is people and execution, right? And you got to do the work. And then it gets easier, right? And when it's positioned like this, all you have to do is be better than your competition, have a better story. And that really starts to look at career opportunities. Because I'll tell you another factor that we really haven't talked about is that people want to be part of a winning team. People want to be about something that is bigger than themselves, and that's not about money.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Tom, I want to give you an opportunity to hop in here on this, and also referrals. I saw that was being talked about a little bit in the chat as well.
Yeah, first thing is, my years as an MSP owner, I was always a believer. I like to go into the office. I like people to come in the office. I was never a big believer in remote work. However, I had a situation where I had to kind of shift a little bit. I had an employee who needed to move. He wanted to move and marry someone and moved a few hours away to Richmond. And I kept him on remotely. Of course, that person had the tribal knowledge that Mark speaks of because he was coming from being within it. And then I found that I could actually be a little flexible. We had very small office space for a while. We really didn't have room for a lot of people in there. And so I started adopting more of a little more lax policy where you had to come in like a couple days a week, or you had to go and go on the road and do the in-person calls a couple days a week, but allowed people some flexibility to be home. And I think that's kind of what we're entering here, is that you've got to kind of work with people a little bit, because if it's going to hold back your business from scaling, because you're not getting people, you might have to go halfway. I am a believer, though, somewhat with Mark, that fully remote employees, especially when they're on part of the tech team, can be very problematic. And you've got to somehow rope them into some type of interaction on a regular basis where it kind of counteracts that.
Yeah, I see that Sandra here in the call, and Sandra, no pressure with my invite there, but if you want to come on, I would love to hear from you. But I see she's mentioning something called Crushmake, which I'm not familiar with. Okay, yeah, Sandra, if you don't mind, I'll pull you up just for a couple minutes. Would be great.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak real quick, Jonathan, about the referral programs Don mentioned.
Yeah,
I got my best employees by getting my employees to refer other people. That was the best hires I ever had. They often knew that those people had knowledge. They had worked with them other places. They knew about them. And as I put in the chat here, I made it really simple. It was $1,000 once the new hire had been on for 2 months. And would love to hear what anyone else did, what's working. Would like to hear from the other experts on the panel as well.
Yeah, I know Mark has a big referral initiative that you guys did.
100%. You want me to jump into that and share it?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So, and this really, and these are strategies, right? So if I go back to August of 2012, when I started my MSP, it was that I acquired a small IT company that had the owner and 2 employees, right? So these are strategies when we were at the very, very ground, how we started to build our organization. And these strategies work both with sales roles, they work with technical roles, they work with executive roles as you guys are trying to grow. And so I'm going to share this from the sales perspective, and what I'm sharing, guys, this is R&D, right? Rip off and duplicate. You guys are completely, can take this system and use it in your local markets. But as our salespeople would roll around in accounts, and we'd get developing the relationship, maybe at the end of the proposal process, we would always ask them, first we'd pump our referral program for more customers, but then we would always ask a question. Besides myself, who else have you talked to in this opportunity as you're seeking out a managed service vendor besides myself that's sharp? And then we would listen. And sometimes you'd get, hey, there's nobody good that's in this deal, right? Which would be a sign of victory because you knew you were about to win the deal and you can hold your margins. Or they would say, oh, well, there's this one girl that's extremely sharp. And then we would roll in and say, well, hey, listen, how would you like $5,000? We have a referral program that we call a wanted program. And since we're in Texas, we kind of fashioned this after, awesome, cowboys and Indians and a little wanted sign, right? and so I'll just read this to you guys real quickly. It says, top sales talent wanted. Do you want a rainmaker? We're looking for the following characteristics. Hunter mentality, knows how to prospect, qualify, and close. Successful track record of selling IT services, preferred. Team player, self-motivated, knows how to create a sense of urgency. Goal-oriented, high achiever, self-disciplined, positive outlook, personal integrity, high self-esteem, and a multitasker. So on the back of this is the core values of our company, right? And we say, listen, if you know somebody that matches these core values, they'd be a great fit and we'd love to talk to them. But if they don't match these core values, it's going to be pretty miserable for us and it's going to be awful for them and it's going to be a really short-term relationship. And then the details of the program, and this is where this doesn't cost you any money. On the sales side, right, we say, listen, if we have a successful hire, we're going to send you a gift card for $250. Once the sales reps generated their first $100,000 in gross profit or whatever number you want to set it at, or if it's a technical role, we do this and we say when they've been with us for 90 days, right, that we're going to send you an additional check to you or the charity of your choice for $4,750. And then we get names, right? And then the second half of this program, by getting names of reps in the field, or by going to LinkedIn, or by interacting with your customers and going, hey, have you seen any other sharp people that are calling on you, right? We'll make calls directly to those sales reps, right? And would essentially say, hey, Jonathan, this is Mark Elliott. We've never had the pleasure to meet before. One of our customers mentioned you and just said that you are a rock star. I happen to be one of the greats in our business as well. And just to put you at ease, this isn't a recruiting call. We're not hiring today, but I always think it's good when people, are the best at what they do, to know each other. Can I buy you a cup of coffee sometime next week? And I typically try to set it for like 6:30 in the morning. And if that guy or girl won't meet me at 6:30 in the morning, I know it's not my person already, right? And then once you start to develop that relationship, you talk, right? What's going on in your business? What's going on in the market? Who's good? Who's not? Who's shady? Who does a bad job? And you start to learn so much about your competition. And then you create a consistent cadence and follow up, right? So maybe at the end of a quarter, I'm going to call up and I'm going to ask, Jane Doe, how did your quarter go? And she's going to go, man, I crushed it. I was 150% of quota. Jane Doe, that's incredible. Let me buy you a martini. Let's get together for a cold beer. And I start the relationship. But at some point in every company, including my own, there's problems, right? There's change in compensation. There's a change in the market. And when that happens, because you've got your ear to the street, you're calling back into that candidate and you're going, hey, Jane Doe, how did it go this month? Oh, this is bad or that's bad. Oh, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's go cry in a beer this time. And I meet with her again. But eventually there's a compensation change or something that happens. And I'm going to put a kill shot call back into her. And I'm going to be like, Jane Doe, man, I just heard that they changed their comp plan. Again, how do you feel that you're going to have to work 25% harder to make 10% less? That's got to be tough. Let's go have a beer. And in that meeting is when I'm going to put the deal together. And that whole process might be 90 days to years, right? But that's how you pull the best talent out of the marketplace. Because when you start to look at resumes and you start to look at the people that come from the froth at the top, from the aggregators or the Indeeds or whoever brings all these free resumes to us, right? Nothing's free, right? Because you end up paying for it with poor talent sometimes. But when they bring all this to us, man, these people are professional interviewers. You've got so many people that job skip and job hop, right? And really the people that you truly want to hire, they've been in their current role for 10 years, for 15 years. That's who you want. And they're never interviewing, right? So you're never going to get top talent if you don't look at how you focus on this and have concentrated effort.
Mark, thank you so much for that. And I will say, everybody, Mark used the analogy of you just have to run faster than the other gazelles, and the fastest lion. Well, Mark and what he's doing, he's a fast gazelle. So now that's the challenge for everybody. Now we got to catch up. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to go back to a couple of things you said, Mark, but I want to take advantage of this time with Sandra because I know, thank you so much first of all, for being willing to hop on. It's great to see you again. And your time is limited, so let's make sure we make the best use of it for just a couple minutes. I'm just kind of curious, any other reactions or, because I know that this is obviously something that you're dealing with right now. Any other big questions that you have for these guys or any other kind of, really like the hardest part, something that we haven't touched on or that we have so far?
No, but I am ripping off the wanted idea. I'm totally taking that from Mark. I'm just having issues hiring, and they're so much greater than they used to be. I used to be able to get a ton of resumes, just going to Indeed, and we'd have somebody within a month at the latest. Right now, I've had an ad running on Indeed since, I want to say May, and I still have not found that person. And the thing that I'm finding is that all the people that are applying are low-level technicians, inexperienced. So I'm going to have to spend a lot of time training them. A lot of them I see that are job hoppers, like you guys mentioned before. We want to make sure that we have this person stay with us once we hire them. So those are some of the challenges that I'm seeing. Never had this problem before, not since COVID.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that and putting it into words. And I know that, especially because I know a lot of people on the call here are experiencing the same thing through those polls. We know that, right? So thank you for sharing that. And I want to get these guys to kind of react to that and maybe share some advice. I know you got to run too, so I'll let you hop back off. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing that.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Sandra, for cutting you off. It's so great. Sandra's been here. She's been on all sorts of chats, and she's a great MSP and great person to have in this community. Thank you again, Sandra. So yeah, John, I mean, can we kick this over to you first? Anything that you would have to share or react to what Sandra's talking about there? Any advice?
First question would be, what was the job title that she posted? If she's trying to go after a tier 2, use a tier 3 job title, something that's more synonymous with attracting, that speaks to what a tier 2 would want. Mention projects. 90%, 80% of that ad should be spent selling, talking about trajectory and how it's going to create opportunities. depending on the size of your organization, how many spots you have open, I would probably roll up my sleeves and I would write 15 job descriptions, tweaking the same templated one, almost with all different flavors, fits and flavors of different job titles, interchanging the words system admin, engineer, projects. If you offer a hybrid work model, definitely want to promote that. Mention your benefits. And then I'd probably throw $500 to $1,000 at it. I built a business model staffing 800 MSPs for the last 10 years, exclusively doing different flavors of what I just explained to you. And then when someone applies, you got to pounce. You got to make the use of every single opportunity you get when a good candidate comes along. I would reach out to that candidate on LinkedIn, send them an email, pick up the phone and call them. Have a follow-up cadence going after that candidate, and then know what profile that candidate fits, right? If they're tier 1, they probably want to get away from the mundane help desk, right? And sell them on the trajectory, the career track, and how they would reach that point. It goes back to like knowing your audience. But yeah, I think that's the first couple of questions I would ask and my immediate knee-jerk reaction.
Thank you for sharing that, John. And I want to bring Mark in here, specifically on the topic of the job hoppers thing we just mentioned. It was something that we had talked a little bit about in our prep call, but is there a good way to identify a job hopper and maybe even just beyond the resume, identifying talent? If you could touch on that, Mark.
Yeah, so it's probably just looking at tenure and how long somebody's been there, right? Which is kind of recruiting or HR 101. But the challenge is that when you've got 3 bad deals sitting in front of you and you got to pick one of them, you can't get to success, right? And sometimes you get very, very lucky, right? And so it really comes down to 2 things, right? You've got to go hire a staffing firm or recruiting firm that's going to run this process for you and bring that ultimate candidate to you. Or if you do it yourself, you've got to roll up your sleeves and get in the market a bit, right? And I take this space, right, so seriously. And you look at the challenges that are faced by all MSPs that are out there. And as we've grown our MSP partners to 185, we've talked to thousands of MSPs. And we continue to see the same recurring issues that come up, and there's 6 of them. But as it relates to this call today, 1 is around skills on a team for SaaS, global security, application performance, and network health, right? Which means that you've got to change the skills on your team that's being driven by today's technology. And then the second is higher labor costs that are eroding profitability. And maybe this is tied directly to this candidate market that's out there. But when it comes down to the root, Henry Ford said that I'd rather have 1% of the efforts of 100 men than 100% of my own efforts. And if we back that with a Michael Gerber quote from the EMET, he goes, listen, you're either working in your business or you're working on your business. And it's the difference between strategic and tactical. And the MSP world is stuck on the tactical side of this business. We're working in the business. We're working on the recruiting, right? So we're a tactician and we turn a screwdriver. We're behind a server from 8 to 5. But then from 5 to 10, we think that we're going to become an expert, which takes 10,000 hours, right? We're going to become an expert in lead generation, in sales, in recruiting, to the expense of missing Sally's dance recital, little Johnny's baseball game, and messing up intimacy with your wife. What a miserable life, right? And so I think you've really got to kind of back up and look at this. And I think we live in a society that wants to go to Home Depot or Office Depot and hit that easy button, right? And if you relate recruiting and sales and marketing to the diet industry, right? We have a society that wants to pop a pill. We want to take a shot of wheatgrass juice. We want a $39 bottle of apple cider vinegar because it makes the doctor go away. But what the real answer to it is do the work, right? Eat right, exercise, work on your flexibility, work on your mental capacity. You do all that, you've got long tenure in your life. But it takes work, it takes drive, right? And I think that's the same thing that has to be applied to recruiting. Now, if I had all those things in front of me, that I needed to work on lead gen and I needed to work on sales, the thing that I would work on is how to become an expert recruiter, because you can build it around you where you're not doing the work, right? And so I think when we really all look at this entrepreneurial journey, it is not about money, right? Some people think it's money and it's broken and it's probably why they're not growing. But ultimately, the entrepreneurial journey is about getting your time back, right? It's the most valuable reset. It's our greatest asset. And we can't get more of it. So by building this right, where other people are doing the work and you're on the strategic side of the business, you get your time back. And then I think the second piece of that, and this goes through the vein of your employees, right, and your customers. It's to make everybody be the best version of themselves. If you could help another human being be better, right, now you've got purpose to what you're doing. And so my 2 cents.
Mark, you have some fans in the chat here, so just letting you know that, maybe respond to them. Big fans of you there.
Thanks, guys.
Want to go ahead and talk a little bit about hiring out of state. Audience members, are you doing that? I see in our poll here, we have about 43% of people saying yes, we are considering hiring out of state. Some people saying not currently, but we're also considering as well. So maybe if you could share in the chat, audience, what's holding you back from jumping in, from just going from considering to hiring out of state. And John, if you could tell a little bit about that too. Are you helping MSPs hire across state lines or in different regions, small metros versus the superstar metros and things like that?
Yeah, we close about 32% of the job orders that we work for our clients. It's been basically like clockwork since I started the company. The close rate for work from home positions is over 50%. And we didn't really have a whole lot of work from home jobs until 2021. And we'll work a lot of tough positions like, senior level security engineers or MSP salespeople or super high level VCIOs. And, we kind of start scraping the bottom of the barrel. And we suggest going, open it up, hire someone from, somewhere else in the country, maybe even a different time zone. And it seems to be working because it just casts such a larger net. And I think MSPs are doing it because the speed to market's quicker. You're going to fill your seat faster, access to better talent for less money. And we're seeing a lot of MSPs going that route for both those reasons. And I think that they play the same emphasis on both. But it's right now it's a winning strategy, especially the tier 3 level, because they're just so darn hard to find right now.
And when you're hiring out of state, there is that cost of living adjustment that we talk about. Tom, I want to bring you in here. When you're hiring out of state, when you're hiring across state lines, how can you manage for that cost of living adjustment? Does it sometimes play in the MSP's favor?
Yeah, it absolutely can. And I did some of that as well. I brought on some guys to do some pure help desk level 1, level 2 support. And they were actually referrals of people that had worked for me previously and moved away, and they either did some work for me or had some other people do some work for me. And you could look at something. As a matter of fact, we did our cost calculator about 6 weeks ago, and in that cost calculator on the second tab, there is a link in there for a cost of living allocation, and you can use that second tab in the cost calculator to figure out what your technicians are costing you by inputting whatever they're getting from you in terms of you're paying taxes or benefits and that kind of thing. But it's a really good thing you point out, Dom, because you can look at another area. And I have a friend who owns a web development company, and he hires all people from a couple areas in Ohio because he's restricted it to that state. He finds he can hire for a little less than the DC area, which technicians cost a lot in. And he also gets really good talent. And he's kind of got a referral network there because he's hiring amongst a group that keeps referring him business and getting new people. I will say you can run into some problems if you start trying to hire in a bunch of different areas, if you're making them full-time employees and not contractors, because you can get into reporting issues. And so that's something you need to be aware of as well. And I know we have an expert on here that can probably speak to that.
Yeah, just to jump in, guys, I'm going to drop a link to that calculator because it's kind of fun to play along with anyway. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to a couple of things where, you mentioned casting the wider net. So that's one area where you can do that, right? And another way that kind of goes into some of these questions here is regarding tenure, or how much experience you need. We had a question saying after 4 years, it looks like someone's going to be ready to move on for a help desk. But the initial question was, how long should someone have been in an MSP for you to consider them? Obviously, that's going to vary per the role. But John, I mean, are you working with clients that way in terms of encouraging, in some cases, to look outside of just primarily MSP experience?
It's a great question. I mean, our clients pay us a premium to bring people to the table, have tangible experience that they can point at that indicates they can step in and do this work. And I think that tenure plays a huge part in it. Our clients are going to pay someone that's been hopping jobs every 6 months or even every year. So I think that on average, everyone knows, I think the average number of years a candidate works, like as a tier 1 help desk, is probably, it's like less than 2 years. The tier 2s tend to stick around the longest in their position. I'd say, if you find someone that's a tier 2 with 3+ years experience, I'd probably hop right on them. And I guess it's kind of open to discussion, and it's really depends on what you want from your tier 3s. But yeah, the tier 1s and the tier 2s, they're changing jobs every 2 years. Look to see if why they changed jobs. If you get a resume, email that person. Don't just dismiss, they got 3 jobs. Maybe one was a contract. You got to piece the whole story together before you weed people out, especially now. And that comes into playing, casting the wide net. But yeah, our clients pay us for MSP experience because SLA-driven environments are unlike internal positions, right? You got to have to prioritize. You got to close tickets fast. Customer service is usually just as important as being technical. So that's what usually translates the most, more than anything, is like tangible tenure, 2 or 3 years.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Yeah, going back to the out of state topic. I know, guys, we kind of brought this up in our prep call. I saw a discussion where an MSP owner out of Florida was talking about hiring across the country. Brought up Ohio, like Tom just did actually, and another MSP from Ohio saying, okay, great. Now I have to compete with you guys in terms of salary wise, and this is kind of what Brian's here is talking about. Any tips for those in the situation where they're in low pay areas, and now having to try to outbid out of state providers? I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to a lot of things that Mark and John have been talking about, right? That salary is not the be all end of things. John has hard statistics to back this up. People are taking lower pay for certain things that help them in other areas. Mark is talking about the value of joining a winning team and having the opportunity for career growth and really stressing all these intangible things, in some cases tangible. So anything else you guys wanted to say to respond to that? Mark, maybe kick it over to you.
I'm almost speechless right now. Give me 30 seconds.
All right, John, how about yourself? Any other suggestions for the guys who, or maybe clients that you worked with where you're consistently being maybe outbid? Anything that you're helping them with?
You mean where job offers are falling through?
Yeah.
Yes. I actually learned this from an MSP based in DC. It's actually one of my first clients. And the CEO of this company, I think they're about 400 employees now, and they're like 20 at the time. His job offer would mark the first 3 years of how much their salary would be just based on tenure. So they would see over the next 3 years, just being in the seat, irrespective of their reviews, performance reviews they get by their managers, they were guaranteed to see that salary increase. And I use that here at my own company. And I found it to be extremely powerful because that way they're going to get additional money besides these like $5,000 salary increases or different commission structures because we're a sales organization. But it really ties people in because they can see themselves in the future. And a lot of people end up leaving MSPs or any jobs in general because they don't know what the future holds. Maybe they're not getting regular reviews. They don't know what they're working towards. And that puts a lot of things up in the air. And a lot of them are timid to ask. Not all of them, but some of them are. So building in a job offer and walking them through exactly how the next 3 years are going to go, just from a couple things, right? Or being very explicit about what they're working towards and what they can get. I found that it works really well for my company, and I suggest that to MSP business owners all the time. They get a few offers turned down.
That's great. And Mark, you had those 30 seconds. Anything else you want to add there? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah.
There you go. Got you off mute. There you go.
Oh, perfect. So to piggyback that, I want to share something from mindset that really ties to this topic. Think about the way that you work before you're about to leave for vacation for 7 days. That amount of that efficiency that you have the day before you leave and how much you get done. Now let's take that mindset just a little bit deeper. Imagine that this hire, that you are the attorney in charge of a life or death case and your spouse is on the line. And she is going to get lethal injection unless you can prove her innocence. What type of evidence would you bring? Charts, graphs, testimonials, case studies, work product. And guys, if you can think of more, please put them in the chat. You would build out core values. You would talk about the culture of the organization. Would you send a handwritten note to their house? Would you send, if you're really courting, and think about how you courted your spouse. If we tried to court our spouse the same way that we tried to hire somebody, you probably wouldn't have your spouse today, right? And so I think that this is direct intent when you find what you're looking for, and it's about effort, right? You've got to win, not just by having an opportunity. That's table stakes. Hundreds of companies have opportunities, and it's why there's this fight for talent. But if you position and you execute and touch and nurture this person along the way, think about it in a sales deal or transaction. Who writes handwritten letters today? That's so old school. Man, it is part of our proven process that we do handwritten letters on engagement. It makes the difference, and it's class. And so bring mindset into your recruiting. You'll get very different tangible results.
And to, Brian and Chris in the audience, just saying too, wrapping this up here, just saying that you can be creative. There's some intangibles that are outside salary that you can offer when you're trying to recruit people in your local area, even in those bigger metros, that can help you kind of win out over the other people from larger states trying to steal that talent from you. Are we kind of going to close here, Jonathan? I know we're getting close to time.
Yeah, I think so. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Before anyone jumps, just wanted to bring up Dom. I know there's resources from both our guests here, some really cool stuff in Bowman Williams, including a PDF, a survey. Bowman Williams, for you guys, like the reason you guys, Bowman Williams came up on my radar a while back was seeing the salary guide, the MSP salary guide, where it's still available on their website. There's a link to it here, obviously. And then there's a new survey they just shared with us that we've uploaded here in the resources doc that you guys can check out. This data from the summer. John, thank you so much to you and your team for putting that together. It's really interesting stuff. But Dom, I know there's other resources and there's upcoming events too.
Yes. So wanted to also just shout out the post-pandemic growth tactics blog from the 20, another great piece for MSPs that are trying to kind of grow out of this pandemic. Some great tips in there. We also have a link to the MSP cost calculator with the COLA factor. Tom's talked about that a couple times during this call. So great resource. Highly recommend downloading that. Also added a really just 10,000 foot view data piece from CompTIA about tech jobs all across the country, the most in-demand positions. And then also the Michael Gerber book. We've just linked that there as well. Recommendation from both Mark and John. And then talking about upcoming events a little bit, tomorrow, Tom and I are at TechCon Unplugged in Chicago, doing kind of an MSP time travel experience. If you could go back to the beginning of your business, what changes would you make? Called Back to the Revenue. So if you're in Chicago, you're at TechCon Unplugged. Would love to see you there. Would love to meet you there. Also want to shout out Vision 21, September 29th and 30th in Dallas. 20's big annual event this year. Reignite your passion for your IT business.
And look at that, the DeLorean. Look at this, great minds thinking alike. Back to the future.
Our keynote for that is actually going to be Elon Musk's mother, May Musk,
wow.
talking about her new book, which is going to be incredible. And just a shameless plug for this thing, guys.
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking about lead generation. We're going to be talking about sales. We're going to be talking about scale. I've got an incredible keynote that I'm going to do on growth. I know that in the chat that they put on there, the 20.com/partner. But if you go there, you're going to end up in a meeting with me. And if you would like the opportunity to be battle trained by Mark Elliott in lead generation, sales, and scale, and the opportunity that probably in a 24-month period that we can add an additional $1 million a year in MRR to your business, I would highly suggest that you link into that. And what I'd like to do, subsidized by Ninja here today, is that this conference is last minute for a lot of you guys, but anybody that is on this call that would like to attend this will comp tickets. And for probably 2 or 3 of you, I could even comp your room. And you guys just thank Ninja for that along the way.
Hey, look at that. I hope you definitely. I hope you get some takers for that. And just remind people, Mark, this is going to be an in-person event in Dallas, correct?
Yes, sir. So it's a 3-day event. The first 2 days are open to the public, so you'll get to see May Musk speak, and then Friday is a member-only day. But most of the people that come as guests ended up converting because they're ready to start creating generational wealth.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for that offer, and just so people can do it, what's the best way people can claim that? Should they reach out to you directly? Should they register with the code? Or
you can register right on the main website, and if you will use the registration code Crystal, the event will be free for you.
And just so I make sure I get that right, Crystal, CRYSTAL.
All day long, even if it's raining.
All right, I'm going to drop that in. Promo code Crystal. Awesome. Well, hey, very generous, and that is a good-looking event. And I is the DeLorean going to be there?
Absolutely.
Oh man, there you go.
There we go.
So we don't have a DeLorean showing up tomorrow in Chicago, but we are going to experience, maybe for the people who show up there, some actual time travel, and you may even get to see a younger Tom Watson. We'll see. Absolutely. Well, hey guys, before we drop off, so there's those 2 events. There is also our next live chat is going to be Thursday, September 30th, 4 p.m. Dom, who we got going here? I think I didn't mention the name here. Do you remember who we got?
It's selling cybersecurity and offering that at scale. I actually don't remember who we have.
Okay, here we go. It's Jennifer Bleem, and she is awesome. Like her and Tom have been discussing ways that they're going to collab together. But this is her area of expertise is selling cybersecurity. So she's going to be talking all about packaging cybersecurity and ways that you can create offerings that actually scale and get clients on board without pulling their teeth. And last but not least, a couple of shout outs. MSP Bento is our weekly newsletter. If you haven't yet, check that out. It's 5 easy things that you can accomplish this week as an MSP owner or technician. Good variety of sales and technical stuff there. And then we also have a Slack group. And so I'm going to drop a link there. Sorry for the fast-paced scrolling there. But I'm going to go grab the link to share for joining the Slack group. And you guys can hop in there and we'll keep the discussion going. John, Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And everyone on the call here, you're going to get an email with this recording and resources that go to all those things that we just mentioned. So you can check out Bowman Williams, you can check out the 20, you can sign for Vision, you can do all these wonderful things. With that, Tom, you want to sign us off? Anything else? Any last word from you, Tom?
I think we're good. Really looking forward to this. Jonathan wrote a really great premise for tomorrow, what we're doing at TechCon Unplugged. If you're going to be there, really encourage you to come to this kind of a pre-day event. It's at 4:30 tomorrow, and Dom and I are going to put on quite a show, and you're going to learn a lot of great skills to increase revenue at your MSP.
There we
Thanks.
go.
Excellent.
Thank you all for joining us so much. Thank you to our audience as well for your great engagement today. John and Mark, thank you again.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great rest of your day and a good weekend. See you on September 30th.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Bye now.